All right. Thank you for joining the Virtual NSLI-Y office hours today. So my name is Angela, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Chris. We both work for the Virtual NSLI-Y program. And on our next slide, you're going to see a sampling of some Virtual NSLI-Y students with their cultural projects and writing practice assignments. We'll talk more about that soon. So this is a language and culture program, which makes it extra fun. So our intention with today's session is basically to give you some general information about the program, cover some frequently asked questions, and then answer any questions that you may have. And once we get through our little presentation at the beginning, we'll start looking at the Q&A box and responding to anything that's coming through there. And we also expect to upload a recording of this session within the next week, and we may also run an additional session. But basically, our main plan today is to make sure you have all the info you need to determine your eligibility and hopefully apply for the Virtual NSLI-Y scholarship. And feel free, if you're a student, if you're a parent, if you're a teacher, we can answer any questions that you may have. And next. So currently for the Virtual NSLI-Y Winter 2025 program, we have 6 languages that we'll be offering: Arabic, Mandarin Chinese, Hindi, Korean, Russian, and Turkish. And the number of sections and available times can depend on teachers' availability and budget considerations, but all the languages for Winter 25 will offer between 1 and 4 class sections per language. And we often get questions about acceptance rates. These can vary quite a bit between terms and across languages. And we do try to run as many sections as meets sort of demand application wise, but it can really vary from term to term. Generally speaking, across languages, acceptance rates can fall anywhere between 20 and 50%. So again, it depends on what language you're applying for and who else decides to apply in any given term. And just generally speaking, Virtual NSLI-Y is a language and culture scholarship that is going to teach beginner language skills and introduce the participant to the culture of the places where that language is spoken. It also includes every class gets 4 guest speakers per term. So that's someone who's going to come in and either teach about some cultural aspect, or maybe it's a NSLI-Y participant who went to this country and then came back. Maybe it's going to be a culinary project. Maybe it's about a form of art in that part of the world. It really depends on the section, but they're all pretty cool. And the way that it runs is that participants from all across the United States, and that does include U.S. territories as well, meet online 2 times a week for 10 weeks. And each session is 90 minutes with a little break in the middle. And they are all taught by some wonderful experienced language teachers. I get to work closely with those teachers, and we just love their experience and what they bring to our program. So for Winter 25, the program will begin in mid-January, January 13th, I believe, and ends in the middle of March. Currently, we are in the middle of our Fall 2024 program, and we do intend to run another fall program next year. But today we're going to be focusing on the timeline and details of the Winter 2025 program, because that's the application that's open right now. All right, we'll move on to the next slide. Oh, and I think this next slide might mostly be a repeat. Yeah, but these are some images from our different classes. You can see some of the art projects that students have gotten to work on, some of the homework they've worked on, a screenshot from a guest speaker, one of our Turkish guest speakers, who brought our students on a tour of a Turkish bazaar and taught them things like how to count different fruits and vegetables, and how to bargain a little bit at a Turkish bazaar. So this is just a little sampling of some of the things that our participants can expect. And our next slide is just some general information about the impact that this program has. There's so much more that we could say here that goes beyond statistics, but we did run a big alumni survey last year, and we found that you'll see some quotes later on in our presentation that come from alumni, but this can really have a long-running impact on students, especially students who might not already speak a critical language, who have not been abroad before. This can really spark their interest and enthusiasm. And we've built the program in a way where, yes, it's academically rigorous, but it's also supposed to be fun and accessible and get students excited about language learning. And you can really see that in the results, that even though these languages that we offer are less commonly offered and there are fewer resources to continue learning them in the United States, which is why there's a scholarship, students find ways, and of course we help connect them with ways to continue learning these languages. And this can be, really meaningful, not just for the participants and alumni, but for their communities. And there are all sorts of reasons why our participants apply and what our alumni do with their foreign languages. Yes, some of them do join the government, but many others might, for example, go into the medical field. Maybe they have a large immigrant population in their area and they would like to be able to connect better with patients. Maybe they're going to be an engineer and they're going to be working with a country that speaks one of these languages and they would like to connect better with their future coworkers. There are all sorts of different reasons why this scholarship might make sense for all different kinds of students. And Virtual NSLI-Y is an easily accessible way to do that without necessarily having to go abroad. There is, of course, a related study abroad scholarship. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it's not required, certainly, and not necessarily expected that a student also apply for the study abroad version of this program. So and then, we'll go on to the next slide. There is lots more info on our website about our impact on participants and alumni. So I'll skip through this fairly quickly because I think I've covered a fair amount of it. But again, it's 10 weeks, 2 classes twice a week with lots of sort of incorporated cultural information. So students are learning, vocabulary and grammar and basic statements. And there's sort of an emphasis on the verbal component of language learning, though there is, students are also learning how to read and write. Because these classes are so short in a sense, or because the program is so short, the classes really emphasize getting each student to have an opportunity to practice and speak the language. So there's only 10 students per section maximum, which means that there's lots of opportunities for each student to practice their language learning and respond to questions. And there are also optional student group meetings that we have for students to connect with each other outside of the classroom. So we have students, of course, from all across the US, from all sorts of different backgrounds. And we try to put, students from the same area in different classes so that they can meet a more diverse cohort of students. But we offer other ways to help students connect across different class sections or to find people in their area. And Chris helps to run those sessions. Chris, would you want to add any more info about the student group meetings at this point? You don't have to, but.
Yeah, so they kind of have a range of topics. Some are more professionally focused, some are covering other opportunities that we think Virtual NSLI-Y students would be interested in. And also just recently we did just kind of a social night, like Angela was saying, so that you could make some connections with students in different sections. We put together a Spotify jam, so we're all listening to each other's music while playing games and just chatting. And it was a great experience, yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, we try again to make this fun, and we've heard from many alumni that they are still in contact with their former Virtual NSLI-Y participants, even though they live in completely different places. They find each other on social media and continue to connect with each other. And many of them are just so excited to find other students who are just as excited about language learning as they are, even if they might not know a lot of those students at their school or in their class. So that's another really big benefit of this program, is that community benefit. All right, so now we'll jump into the details. So this is basically the quick version of our eligibility requirements on the screen. These are also available on our website. I will note that we get a lot of requests for exceptions to the eligibility requirements, so I wanted to briefly cover them here and note that we really can't allow any exceptions to these requirements as they're set by the U.S. State Department. Chris and I work for the nonprofit that implements this program, American Councils for International Education, but obviously we answer to the State Department and we cannot waive any of these requirements for students. So some of the highlights of these that I want to note is students should already have their U.S. citizenship at the time that they apply. Sometimes we have students who are permanent residents and are working their way through the process, but they do have to have their citizenship at the time of application so that we can ensure their eligibility in order to admit them to the program. Also, applicants need to participate from a U.S. state or territory. So, of course, there are many Americans who live abroad, but this program is intended for students who generally have not had many opportunities to, or any opportunities to leave the United States. And so these students are expected to participate from the U.S. And of course, our class times reflect that as well. They're more friendly to U.S. time zones. This also means that you can apply from abroad, but you have to participate from the US and you have to still be in high school at the time of participation. This is a bit different from the overseas programs, which allow you to participate during sort of a gap year or the summer after you graduate. For Virtual NSLI-Y, you have to be in high school at the time. The birthday range, alas, is not flexible. So if you are too young this year, please consider applying for fall 2025 or a future program. If you're a little too old for the program, then we recommend a CLS Spark. We'll mention this again later, but there's a very similar program at the university level that we recommend. And most importantly, this program is designed for true beginners. So what that means is if you know a few words in the language or if you've done some practice on Duolingo or something, but you can't really speak, that should be okay. But if you've had any formal instruction at all in the language, or maybe you can speak the language because maybe your parents speak the language, but you're not able to read the language, etc. This is not really the ideal program for you, and we would advise you to look at the overseas programs instead, which have the full range of different proficiency levels. Virtual NSLI-Y is 100% for beginners. And there's more information about how we define beginner on our website. There's some sort of formal descriptions of what we mean by that. But essentially, if you can introduce yourself fairly well in the language, if you can read the language, again, if you've had any formal instruction, then you're probably a little bit too advanced for this program because it is built for students who know nothing at all. And we want to make sure that those students who know nothing at all are feeling comfortable and that they're in a cohort of other students who are in the same boat, so to speak. Okay, and again, there's more information on our website, but this is the quick version of our eligibility requirements. We will be offering 4 different schedule options in the winter. These are the same as they were for fall 2024. Once again, we cannot make exceptions to these. We have selected times that generally work for almost all time zones. Hawaii can be a little tough. We have had some Hawaiians participate, but sometimes they have to ask their school if it's okay for them to participate. But we have students across the whole US that are participating. And then we do our best to give the student their preferred time. But of course, sometimes that's not possible because maybe a section that language isn't being offered at that time, for example. But we do try our best to match students with the preferred time. But in the application, they're asked to rank their preferences from 1 to 4. And of course, every term we get students who say, oh, I didn't realize that this was not in my time zone. So please be sure to adjust this to your local time zone. And we only choose Eastern time because we've got to select something as, to base all of our times off of. It's not because we have a bias towards the East Coast. I am, in fact, based in Seattle, so I completely understand. And Chris is from California, so we do understand that, it can be a little tricky to translate these times sometimes, but do be sure to adjust these to your local time zone when you're selecting your times. And students are told which time they have gotten when they are accepted to the program. And we will ask students, can you participate at this time? And if they can't, then we would advise them to apply again. It's really, really hard for us to switch a student to a different section. It may be possible, but it's very rare. Okay, and next, we've got, just a little bit more about, we get a lot of questions about the overseas programs, and Chris and I do work very closely with our colleagues who administer the overseas programs, but we are, a different scholarship. But we get a lot of these questions, so we thought we would cover a few here. The overseas programs are in summer or full academic year, while Virtual NSLI-Y is an after-school program that is run in fall and winter. We do not have a summer program at this time. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the overseas programs permit post-graduation participation. Virtual NSLI-Y does not. The overseas programs have a GPA requirement. Virtual NSLI-Y does not. We do request you to provide a transcript, but let's say that, maybe a student gets straight A's in Spanish, but maybe they got a D in chemistry. That they may still do very well in Virtual NSLI-Y, right? So we don't have a GPA requirement, or they get a B plus in Spanish, that kind of thing. So we're not quite as strict as the overseas programs when it comes to the grades, but we are looking for students who seem like they are ready to succeed in language learning. Virtual NSLI-Y is not a credit-bearing course unless, of course, you're homeschooled, and then it's kind of up to you. But it's not something that we're going to be issuing a transcript for. We give students a certificate of participation to show that they completed the program in good standing. But that's what we do at the end of the program. We also don't have, we don't typically have formal language proficiency testing at the beginning and end of the program. Obviously, at the beginning of the program, everyone should be a novice. And at the end of the program, such a short program that we don't typically offer like OPI testing, for example, but sometimes we're able to do that. And of course, as I mentioned, the overseas programs are open to all proficiency levels, while Virtual NSLI-Y is only for beginners. We always get that question because it's a really cool program. But yeah, beginners only. All right. Another important thing to note about Virtual NSLI-Y that makes it different and I think special, as opposed to the overseas programs, is that Virtual NSLI-Y gives preference to applicants, like there are points given to students who have not had an opportunity to go on exchange before, who have not been overseas or have had very limited opportunities to go overseas, who don't have a lot of connection with the culture that they're about to study, who have not had opportunities to study other critical languages that are offered by NSLI-Y or have been offered by NSLI-Y, and have not, or even if any opportunity to study any other foreign language before, that's a plus when it comes to Virtual NSLI-Y, because we want this government scholarship to be offered to students who don't otherwise have these opportunities. If you don't perfectly fit these priorities, that's okay. We always have students who might be a little more well-traveled or might speak a few other languages, because of course, those are the students who tend to be really excited about language learning and are seeking out those opportunities. We totally understand that, and we always have room for those students as well. So don't be discouraged if that's your situation. Our participants do reflect a diversity of experiences, and that I think enriches the classroom experience. But we do have this priority system, and we want to make that clear to students who haven't had these opportunities that we are looking for you if you haven't done these things before. So don't be intimidated and do apply if you haven't had. This will just be a quick slide about the application coming up next. All these details are on our website. And we also have a YouTube webinar that goes in much more detail about what the application looks like and what we're looking for. But essentially, this is what our application covers, and I think we'll keep moving on. The one thing I'll note while we're switching slides is do email us. We're going to share our email address at the end of this presentation, and it's readily available on our website. But don't wait until the last minute to ask us questions. Within the last, 48 hours of an application being due, we get a lot of inquiries, and that we can't promise that we're going to get to all of them. So review this information early, start your application early. Even if you wait till pretty close to the deadline, make sure that you know what your questions are and ask them before the very last minute so that you're not calling us in a panic. And check the time zone of the application and ensure that you are not submitting it late. So here's our winter 2025 timeline. The application is now open, and it will be open for the next 2.5 weeks about. There is a few extra days for recommenders to submit their recommendations. I believe that's October 22nd, but please double check our website to verify that. And then we are reading. And it's not just us, it's a large team, and there's a system of multiple readers per application to ensure fairness across all of our applications. But we read as fast as we can to ensure that students are notified whether they got in or not, or whether they are an alternate for the program by early December. And just a couple weeks later is orientation. So it moves pretty quickly once the student gets in. And then we have some test sessions to make sure students' Zoom links and everything are working in early January. And then we have classes starting in mid-January. The actual start date of each class will, of course, depend on what day of the week that their class is taking place on. But this is generally, these are our program dates. And then we also have a closing ceremony at the end of the program. This is typically attended by a State Department official, someone who helps to administer the program, as well as a Foreign Service officer, typically. Usually this is someone who has done NSLI-Y themselves and has continued in that along that path and can really inspire students to show how they can use these languages in the future. And again, there's so many different ways that students can use these languages, but we use this closing ceremony to provide opportunities about other scholarships and to provide the State Department an opportunity to meet students and again inspire them to continue. Next, we're going to move over to Chris. So Chris is going to be covering some of the most frequently asked questions that we receive. And then once we get through those, if you have any questions that we do not answer, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box and we will answer them there. And if we can't get to them today, then feel free to email us and we can get them to you that way. And with that, I will pass it over to Chris.
Yeah, so let's get started. Our first one is, what are the chances that I get accepted to Virtual NSLI-Y? Which is kind of a hard one to answer because acceptance rates can vary a lot across the languages and by terms. Maybe one program will have higher interest or have more competitive applicants. So there's not an easy way to answer this. But something we can say is that we consider an applicant holistically. We don't just look at their academic performance. We like to hear, we put a lot of focus on the essays and the recommendations. So we don't want our applicants to be thinking in this way anyways. We hope that our applicants aren't applying to a language just because they think that that would be the easiest one. The applicants who get a scholarship from us are students who are very excited about their language and can express that in their application. Another one is something we already talked about, is if your birthday is outside the eligible age range, but you are 15 before the winter program starts, can you still apply? And unfortunately, you cannot. Our age eligibility range shifts every year, not every term, and we cannot make exceptions. However, we do really encourage you to apply next cycle once you are eligible. Applicants older applicants tend to make more competitive candidates, so we do really look forward to seeing those. Moving on, can I continue to do virtual NSLI-Y for a second term? So by the definition of being a program for beginners, no, you cannot. You are ineligible after doing 1 semester of study. So unfortunately, you cannot do virtual NSLI-Y one more time. But as we mentioned, there are other opportunities for you to pursue in college or elsewise as a high school student, such as Star Talk. And leading into that, I'm currently a senior in high school, but I'll still meet the age eligibility requirements next year. Am I eligible next fall? So another requirement for participation is being a high school student at the time of participation. So that's when those programs that cater to college students come in. One thing we brought up before is CLS Spark, which is a very similar program to Virtual NSLI-Y, just at the college level. So if you are not eligible anymore, there are options for you to continue language study. Worry not. Up next, do I have to pay to apply or to participate in Virtual NSLI-Y? And you do not. You just need a computer with internet, a webcam, a headset, and a quiet place to participate from. And we'll also send you some items. Those range from fun items that you will be making crafts out of in class or having cultural experiences with, to, if you are eligible, financial assistance, so that maybe NSLI-Y administration can help you reach these participation requirements, these physical ones. Up next, can I apply to Virtual NSLI-Y if I have never studied a language before? Hopefully we've made this clear already. Yes, we give priority to applicants who have had fewer language and cultural learning opportunities. You just need to be committed to language and cultural learning. And again, express that in the application. We're very excited to see people take up language study for the first time. So please, please apply. Up next, I've formally studied my preferred language before, but I'm still a novice. Am I eligible for Virtual NSLI-Y? So you are welcome to apply to Virtual NSLI-Y for a different language. If you formally studied it before, you will be ineligible for that language. And Virtual NSLI-Y classes are intended for true beginners with no prior experience studying the language. This is both for your prospective classmates who don't have someone way above their level, but it's also for our applicants, because who wants to be in a language class way below their level? So we encourage you to look at other opportunities like the Overseas NSLI-Y, which has a wide range of language levels offered. That one will match your language experience, or Star Talk. So they're side of Virtual NSLI-Y. Again, my current school year isn't complete. What should I submit as my transcript? So we only want to see your most recent transcript. It's okay to submit a 1 semester transcript plus spring schedule though. So we want to see everything that you can give us at that point, which would be your most recent transcript. Moving on, can I still apply for an overseas NSLI-Y program if I'm accepted to Virtual NSLI-Y? The answer to that one is yes, we actually encourage it. However, do keep in mind that some overseas programs have a separate application process, and you can find all the info for that on the website right there, nsliforYouth.org. Up next, will participating increase my chances of getting accepted into an overseas program? And it depends. Your participation in Virtual NSLI-Y will be considered if you apply for an overseas program, but it can either help or hurt. So if you did an amazing job, were extremely participatory, seemed super into the culture and all that, that can absolutely help. If you didn't attend all your classes, you were hard to get in touch with your teacher, or you otherwise just didn't seem very engaged, this will also be taken into consideration into your overseas application. Moving on, what if I need to miss a class? So our attendance policy allows up to 3 excused absences. We need you to inform your teacher and NSLI-Y staff, that's me and Angela, in advance. And you are expected to watch recordings of missed classes and make up all the missed work of that session. Next, who is the best person to complete my recommendation? So it is not necessarily a language teacher, but we look for an adult who knows you very well, and also importantly is not related to you, and can speak to your academic motivation and readiness to be a virtual language student. So perhaps the most common recommenders we see are language teachers or other teachers, but we also accept recommendations from people like coaches, from other community leaders who can speak on your character and motivation for a program like this. So you do have a recommender in your life. And up next, a question that we love to answer is, why should I study a critical language? So I just completed 2.5 years in Taiwan, where I studied one of our NSLI-Y languages, Chinese, and it was really a life-changing experience. And also my language study began virtually at the university level. So I am right there with you for virtual NSLI-Y applicants. It was an incredible intellectual challenge. I felt like I was learning new things every single day and picking up new skills. And also taught me how to better understand people who are vastly, vastly different from me and have very different lived experiences. And it was a really exciting tool to relate to them and to make friends with people that I otherwise would not have been able to at all. And so it can support, off the slide here, support your academic achievement, expand your worldview, and lead to an exciting career, study, and volunteer opportunities that are in high demand. And so we believe that while critical languages are less commonly taught in US schools, they are essential to our positive engagement with the world. And just based off our experience, it's a really, really worthwhile endeavor. And now I'll pass over to Angela to speak on that.
Yeah, I will just add from my perspective, I was a high school exchange student in Russia, and I wish that something like Virtual NSLI-Y had been available to me in high school because I went abroad knowing nothing and starting from scratch. And Virtual NSLI-Y would have been a great springboard for me. But I should also say I did not apply for any government scholarships when I was that age or in college. And I think there are a lot of potential applicants out there that might be like me who think, oh, I'm not valedictorian, or, I'm not like a perfect fit for this program, or I don't have all this proof that I'm ready for this program. So I'm not going to apply because I'm not going to get in. Don't be that student. Apply. What we're looking for, we understand that, we're working with beginners who haven't been abroad. You're not going to have a long, resume of things that prove your interest in that language, because otherwise you probably wouldn't be eligible for this program. We're looking for curiosity. We're looking for, are you interested in people who are different from you? Are you just curious about your world? Or maybe you're just, you get really excited about language learning in general. We have some students who are like huge grammar nerds, for example. That's another sort of type of student. Or maybe you're just really passionate about a cause and you see learning this language as a way to advance that cause that you're passionate about. These are things that we're looking for in applications. If you're valedictorian, that's great. But that is not necessarily the criteria that we're looking for. And we really do want to make sure that students understand that this is intended for students who maybe live in communities where they don't know anybody from this culture. They don't know anyone who speaks this language, and they're curious and driven enough to apply for this program and to push through those initial really tough few weeks of going from zero to being able to speak full sentences and talk about yourself and your family or introduce your community in a very foreign language. And that's such an exciting journey. And we hope that Virtual NSLI-Y, again, makes that fun and relatively easy, though it is a challenge always, and interesting for our students. And then I think we might be getting to the end. I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A box at this time, but if you have any, feel free to put them in the Q&A box now, or again, feel free to email us. And then I think our next slide is just some general information about the program. Once again, the application deadline is coming up pretty fast. It's October 17th. And what I would say is don't wait until the last day to submit. Most people do. But don't be the person panicking because your electricity went out and you couldn't submit, or you mixed up the time zones. So submit a little bit early, but do start your application at least early. So again, so that you have time to ask us questions and to look at our website. So our website has more frequently asked questions or responses to frequently asked questions. We have more information about all the requirements. We also have a YouTube channel. There's not a link here, but if you just look up the YouTube NSLI-Y YouTube channel, you can find some more information about Virtual NSLI-Y and our current programs. We have a flyer if you're an educator or a teacher, an educator or a parent, there we go, who would like to share, or if you have friends who would like to learn more about this program, feel free to distribute that flyer. We also have a very popular Instagram page where we regularly update. We share it with the overseas program. So it has info on things like application deadlines and that kind of thing, but also information about what our students are up to in their classes, what our alumni are doing. And so I really recommend that if you're on Instagram. And also we have a Discord, which is available. If you go to our website, you'll see an icon at the bottom, and it's called Ask NSLI-Y. And essentially it's a space where you can ask any questions that you have about either the overseas or virtual programs. There's a ticket submission system, but you'll also find lots of alumni on there who can talk about their own experiences. So recommend that as well. And finally, if you go to our website, you can sign up for emails. There's a box on the right-hand side of the page where if you input your email, you will receive application announcements. We're very selective about how many emails we send you. We don't want you to feel like we're spamming you. So, we only send a few per application cycle, but it's a good way if you're, not sure when our next cycle is. I would say sign up for email reminders and we'll be sure to let you know about both the overseas and virtual NSLI-Y programs. And of course, if we move on to, I think, our final slide, of course, you can email us. So, and there's a blog as well. So we have lots of ways of learning. So if you go to nsliyinteractive.org, you're going to see stories of alumni for both the overseas and virtual programs there. And then Virtual NSLI-Y at americancouncils.org is me and Chris. That's who you'll be contacting when you email that address. And our typical response time is around 2 business days, but we try to, get those questions turned around as quickly as we can. So again, if we didn't answer your question today, and it's not on our website, then please feel free to email us and we will get back to you as quickly as we can. We really love to see new applicants, to learn about what new students we're reaching, what new parts of the US we're reaching, and we would love to hear more from you. So with that, I think we will, oh, wait, there's one Q&A question. How many students we take per language? It depends on the term. So for winter, I believe we're offering 17 sections, which I believe is our largest ever winter cohort. It's a little intimidatingly big for administrators. We currently have 200 in fall and 170 for winter. And it depends on, we haven't fully determined how many sections will be offered per language, but it depends on demand and ECA, Department of State priorities. So it's kind of a blend of those two elements in terms of how many sections are offered, how many applications we've received for that language in the past, and how much funding we have for each language from the Department of State. So again, we try to make it fairly even across languages in terms of how easy or hard it is to get in, but we never know. And it can be very interesting to see how language popularity can trend up and down even from one term to another. So I hope that generally gives you some information And yeah, our admittance rates again are like, I would say, between 20 and 50% depending on the language and how many people apply. So I hope that helps. And again, please feel free to email us if you have any questions. And thank you for your time today. And we look forward to receiving your applications. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining, guys. Bye-bye.